Loving thy political neighbor. We're talking about that today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malfers Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and AJ Matthew.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, AJ Matthew.
Here we are.
All right. Here we are, back at it again.
And this is episode 250.
Oh,
that's a cool number. It's a good number.
It's a good number. Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember. I was going to look this up, I think a couple of weeks ago, and then I forgot to do the research. But the number of podcasts that make it past like the first handful of episodes is exceedingly small, surprisingly small.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the number of podcasts that make it to 250 episodes, it's got to be an even smaller number. So
Yeah.
we're in an elite crowd of people.
Yeah.
AJ. So
unknown and unranked, even among few. So there we go. Quite an accomplishment.
Actually, I'm surprised actually at how well we do and how many people that I meet who go, I listen to the podcast. So appreciate you all listening over the years, and we'll keep doing it. It's a recurring event on my calendar to record this podcast. So
yeah, it's got to be done.
It's got to be done. All right. Today we're talking about politics. We actually did a couple of months ago. We did another episode just kind of looking at how can we deal with this well in an election year. And so there might be some a little bit of overlap potentially between that episode and this one. But given the events of the last week in this country, in the United States, and given that we're seeing so many of you online, pastor friends and church leader friends, trying to process in real time, how can we do this well? We thought we might try to just pitch in and just encourage you a little bit in how to encourage maybe healthier dialogue and conversation, not just inside of your church, but outside of your church, and training up your people how to be how to love their political neighbors, because it's not so easy just because one state is, leans one political direction and another state leans another political direction. The reality is that in every neighborhood and in every community and every city around this country, there's mixed feelings about all of it. So how can we be good neighbors in that way?
Mm-hmm.
And also on the front end, we want to acknowledge, AJ, this is not a uniquely American thing. So there was a huge moment in our history in this country in that failed assassination attempt on President Trump. But just in the last few weeks, we've had riots in France and big elections in the UK that were controversial. So it's not like being a good political neighbor and loving your political neighbor is uniquely American. So we hope that this is not American only advice. This is advice for Christians who are part of a greater kingdom, having to be good neighbors in the little K kingdom where they live.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, right. The assassination attempt, I guess, is the impetus of just considering this aspect of free will and to some degree, freedom in political freedom, depending on where you are listening from. But and I'll also want to acknowledge, it's referred to as the failed assassination on Donald Trump, but there was loss of life and injury. So and our hearts obviously go out to this man who lost his life when he was not the target. So that's it's shameful and sad that something like that would happen. And then, the response for, gosh, I don't know, a good 12 hours was that the major political parties in the US were like, hey, we should be slightly less ugly to each other. And then they quickly forgot about that and we've moved on.
Yeah, I don't think it was a whole 24 hours before people started being ugly. Yeah.
So, but, considering this, we thought, we can be better. The church can be better and should be, and, most of the time is better than, random political figures in which we can consider our words and hopefully treat each other better. But I think it's a good reminder though, Scott, because we can all get sucked into the political stuff and the vitriol and especially, the social media keyboard warriors that aren't afraid to say anything to anybody. And we can sometimes, as believers, it can slip our mind to whom we belong and to whom we represent to the world.
Mm.
And so, yeah, today was this is a good week. This is a good week for us to consider what should our posture be and what are our options in choosing our words in the political spectrum if we so choose to engage. So, which is a good reminder also, we have the freedom and option to not engage. That is an option.
Yeah.
So we're
That's
going to
one
talk
I'm
about,
working on. I can't tell you the number of times that I've started to type something and then go, but why? Why am
yeah.
I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like the person, sorry, well, this is a side note, and maybe I should bring this up later, but just while it's on my mind, the reality is that the person that you're writing to, the way that social media works now anymore, is that the person that you're commenting on, if it's a big enough post and it's got enough comments, they won't see your comment. But someone that you're friends with, your comment will be seen by them.
True. Yeah.
And so just keep that, like, have that in your brain. When you're about to comment on something, think the person that I'm mad at will probably never see this comment, but
Yeah.
someone who is my friend probably will.
Yeah.
And
That might be news to some people that don't pay attention or know how a lot of social media works,
so
especially
just
Facebook.
think, like, is this something that, is this a tattoo I'd want to wear on my face, this
Hmm.
comment? And I am 100%. I feel like we should both say this, or well, I won't speak for you. All of these things are things I'm actively working on. So please don't hold me to a standard of perfection.
Mm.
But something I want to work on. I think we can all grow in these areas.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of my adult life, I really hated political discussion, and I would not. I just wouldn't engage. I didn't like to talk about it with anybody. I have very strong feelings. I have strong feelings in the realm of politics and policy and ideas. And then I got into politics, and I spent 5 years of my life running at 110% and speaking my mind about everything. And then I stopped doing that, and I'm back to my old self, in which I don't really like to talk about it with anybody other than you, Scott. I can handle talking about it with you. Um, and I really don't want to engage with anybody else. And so this is good as a believer and those of us in ministry to consider our words. So yeah, let's go. So let's just run through this. We got a few things to cover. And the first one is as believers. Again, we're talking. I think the idea here, the point that we're making is as believers, as Christ followers. What's a healthy way for us to engage in healthy discourse? And so the first point is having a commitment to truth and integrity. And truth, I don't know. Depending on your source, what is the source of truth in the political and news spectrum is different than our source of truth in life, which we can come to God's word for that. But where we get our information from can color what we believe to be true, without a lot of fact checking. And so there's a lot of, even well-meaning people that will repeat things that they do not know to be true, whether that's conscious or unconscious. Um, and so what we put out there may not be helping, and it may not even be true. And we have to be careful of that. And I think if we even now taking the time, perhaps Scott, taking the 30 seconds it would take to fact check something might also be the cool off period that we need. So
Yeah.
number one, we may realize, okay, what I was about to say is not even true or factual, so I shouldn't say it. And by the time I find out whether it's true or not, maybe I've thought about it long enough to say, I don't really want to say anything anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think if, from the perspective of loving your political neighbor, even they might have a different perspective or frame of reference than you do. That might also mean accepting that they sometimes might say something that is true. And it might be a truth that you don't like,
Hmm.
but it's true. And I think that having that commitment to loving Christ talks about this, scripture talks about this, loving the truth and being willing to engage in the truth, even if it's a truth that you're like, oh, that's an ugly truth. That's something that I don't really like. It goes against my preconceived notions or the narratives that I've built up in my head. I don't really want to accept that that thing is the truth. And I think as believers, we have to be bigger than our politics and go, there can be things because the reality is that life is messy. So there are going to be truth, true facts that run against whatever narrative you like. So if you're more liberal, there are going to be true facts that run against the narrative that you prefer. If you're more conservative, there are going to be true facts that run against your narrative. And I think being a person that has a commitment to truth and to integrity
Mhm.
means I'm willing to embrace the truth above embracing that storyline I tell myself about the world and about politics or about a candidate or about whatever. Um,
Mhm.
and the world doesn't like that because we want in a social media age and in a podcast age, the irony is not lost on me, that we want there to be everything to be a tight package. And this is exactly how it is. But in real life, there are that facts sometimes run counter. Two things can be true at one time, and they might
Yeah.
seem to run against each other. And I just think that that's important to your point, AJ, that to go, if someone's telling me something, I should try to, as best I can, verify how true it is,
Mhm.
and then be committed to not just rejecting that fact if it's a fact.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and when you're on an emotional state, it's so much more fun to run with the lie
Mm,
narrative or the story. Um, but we got to be committed to the truth.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the word integrity, in a broad Christian sense, if we say we're a follower of Christ and that we hold His word as true, then that's our benchmark. That's our benchmark for integrity, and so that has to be applied to all areas of our life, and whatever it is, whatever the point of the discussion is. So,
Well, and
maybe,
to that point too, AJ, I think it has to be what separates. I'm glad this is the first point we're making. I think this has to be the number one thing that distinguishes believers, regardless of your political leanings, from non-believers is especially in a postmodern era, is a commitment to believing that there is such a thing as truth. Because there's plenty of people out there on all sides of the spectrum who will tell you truth is only a matter of which side of the line you're standing on. And
yeah.
we reject that premise.
Yeah, or that
We,
it's just relative, that it's
or that it's
relative.
relative,
There
right? We
is no
reject
common
that.
standard.
We go, no, there are things that are true,
Hmm.
and there are things that are there are things that are right, and there are
Hmm.
things that are wrong, and it isn't just a matter of perspective.
Yeah, yeah, and you don't get to pick and choose the pieces that you like and you don't like. Um,
That's right.
that gets down into the root definition of integrity. So, um, yeah, so that I don't know, maybe that'll make you choose your words.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. All right.
All right, our next
Number two.
piece. Yeah, next piece, respect and civility. So sometimes again, choosing words. Words matter. And if you just feel so compelled to respond to something or to initiate something, in written or spoken word, it is unchristlike to do it from a point that is not respectful and civil, and which is what has happened. That's been the breakdown, I think, of political discourse in our country for sure, has been the loss of respect and civility. I mean, we policies used to be able to be debated. I mean, my idea is better than yours, and that's talked about and debated, and people can agree to disagree. But it's become so personal. It's become tearing down the speaker instead of the ideas. So we don't debate ideas anymore. We just debate people. And I think that's why everybody feels so dirty about the entire political environment, and why some of us choose not to engage necessarily even in the discussion, because it's so uncivil and disrespectful to people. People's responses to others go immediately into name calling and just breaking down their character and everything about them. And And gosh, if we could regain that, I think that would be a huge win. Um, so
Yeah, I'll
that would be
push back slightly and say I think that we have, in terms of speaking of narratives and truths we tell ourselves, I think that there was never really this golden era where we were debating ideas and not attacking people's character. I mean, you can think of like Alexander Hamilton. Man would have been president, probably, except for the fact that he had this alleged affair and they created this whole magazine paper dragging him through the mud over this thing. So I mean, like, that's literally from the founding of our country. People have been dragging people through the mud on things that are not substantive issues, but personal issues and things like that. So I think that that's always been a part of the American political system, has been name calling, dragging people through the mud, disrespect, and that sort of thing. However, if the question is, how should we treat people? Um, we're called to treat people with respect and civility. I don't think because there's some grand ideal that's from a political perspective that this is better, but from a biblical perspective of this is what's right. We don't treat people this way.
hmm
And that's why, based on that, not based on some past version of us where we were always that way, because I don't know that that ever existed. I would agree that it's worse because I think the quantity of the negativity has increased. I don't think the existence of it is different. I think it's just the volume. But not, and I don't mean by noise. I just mean like the
Yeah.
number. There's way more
Yeah, I
of
think
it.
I could agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I overall, I mean, yeah, I think it's just it has become we become, desensitized to, character negativity. And I think it feels like more the default now instead of maybe something that would come in the extremes. But yeah, 100, 200 years ago, 250 years ago, everybody didn't have a voice. You were talking to your neighbor in the farm next door, but, or, in your one room church slash schoolhouse on Sunday. Today, every single human has a public voice,
Yeah.
literally. I mean, from the age in which we put a device in a child's hand, they then become part of the public discourse.
Now
And
my kids,
everybody chooses to exercise it, it seems.
I'm like, children, keep your mouths shut. You're not going to be on the internet, and I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, your
Uh,
day is coming, though, my friend.
I know.
That's
I'm delaying as long as I possibly can
that's a good
because the
move.
internet's forever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so I think the church, we believers, um, we can be different. We can be set apart, right? Are we not supposed to be pursuing holiness? And I think in respect and civility in the political discourse is a place in which we could look different than the world.
Totally agree. And I think that I think we need not look any further than uh I think Acts is a great place to look at the New Testament and see how did these Christians operate in a climate that was not just kind of built against them. I mean, it was totally from even from the Jewish side, the Jews didn't like the Christians and the Romans didn't like the Christians. No one liked the Christians. And yet they were able to thrive in many cases in those societies, even though the whole society was geared against them. And I think had they not had some degree of understanding of how to operate with civility and respect, that would not have been possible.
Yeah.
And Paul talks a lot about this, and you can see it in action. So if you're wondering, how can we be good citizens, not betraying our principles, not, sometimes that meant having bad encounters actually with the society, but never as the instigator, never as the one who is provoking
Yeah.
civil unrest.
Of course, angry Christians love table turning Jesus. He's their favorite Jesus.
Love table turning Jesus. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, and there were riots that were fueled by things centered around Paul, for example. But those riots were started because of lies said about Paul. And you could never accuse Paul of he personally incited. He
Yeah.
didn't incite a riot.
Yeah. We were there
Um,
in Ephesus. We were right there where
we were right there in Ephesus.
angry
Yeah,
mob
yeah.
was happening. Yeah.
Angry mob happened in yeah. So I think we can learn a lot. If you were like, what does it look like to be a faithful Christian in an adverse context? Take a page from Paul.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of taking a page, our next point here is biblical principles.
Yeah, there you
So,
go.
which is just a supporting foundation, really. I mean, kind of for our civility and respect. In God's word, we find, and in the words of Jesus, our Savior, we find how we are to behave. So I saw a comment on a post yesterday. Somebody used uh, WW JP. What would Jesus post?
Oh,
And
okay.
and so yeah, I think I don't know. It's silly, but maybe it is maybe that's a thought exercise we should do. Can we post something? Can we contribute maybe in a positive way to a conversation, and have it be rooted in biblical truth and principles that Jesus taught and lived, in how we treat others, and in the promotion of dignity, and and in some of our subsequent points that we'll get into.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think just glance over the Sermon on the Mount, which I think is a great primer
Got a lot of
for how to
counterpoint
treat.
options there. Yeah.
Yeah, how to treat people rightly, which I think is that's what righteousness is. Righteousness isn't anything other than doing right by other people.
Hmm.
And we would all be a lot better off if all of us would just do right by other people. And I'm not suggesting that that's an easy thing to do. It isn't. I mean, Jesus kind of is like, hey, what credit is it to you to love people who are close to you? And I want to say a little bit of credit because sometimes it's really hard to be nice to the people who are close to you. It's
Yeah.
not always easy either. But all the more to treat people who you don't necessarily have an affinity for, don't really like, to treat them rightly. I
Yeah.
think we're going to more details on that here as we go along.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm just thinking about social media. It's so pointless. I mean, literally, here's my opinion. I have an opinion on something, and then other people are just like, I have a different opinion, and I hate your opinion. And then it's just back and forth, and then eventually everybody gets tired of it, and it just ends. And then we do that on a different post. Um,
Yeah, right.
it's not like I have a question about something. I'm seeking truth. Can somebody provide me with some information that would be helpful? That it's not that. That's not it. Every now and then it's something, like can somebody recommend an exterminator? But uh, but it's just opinion. It's a battle of opinions. I don't. It's so pointless. Um,
Yeah,
how many posts have we ever followed? How many threads have we followed in which the poster is like, "You've convinced me. I have seen a new perspective, and you have changed my mind. I agree with you
right.
now."
Yeah, you have seen posts that reinforced things you already thought, but you've never seen a post that changed your mind.
Yeah, I'm
And
not sure that
and
happens.
by the way, that's exactly how they want the social media people want it to be.
Yeah.
They want to serve you more of the things that you already like
Hmm.
and randomly mix in something they know you'll hate. That
Yeah. And then they
yeah.
sit
I mean, I'm not
up
trying
in
to be
there.
like they're all manipulating you. I'm not saying I'm not a conspiracy. It's just they're trying to make money. They're trying to sell your
Yeah.
attention.
Yeah, for
And,
sure.
and so the more they can show you things they think you're gonna like, the more you'll stay on, the more you're gonna see an ad. It's just that simple. And when
It,
you realize it's a game,
yeah,
hopefully it can pull you out and go, all right, what am I doing?
it is a Roman Colosseum, and the social media managers are up in their box seats, and
They're literally it's thumbs
yeah,
up and thumbs
a
down.
few, they,
Just like
they they throw some things down at the bottom to fight,
bread and circus. That's
and
right.
the rest of us are in the audience. Yeah. Every now and then one of us gets pulled out of the audience down into the ring. So, yeah.
That's true. It's true.
All right, our next one, prayer and discernment. Just some helpful tips here for you. Maybe pray about it. Um, I mean, wisdom, wisdom, and integrity, discerning. These are things. And again, maybe allow yourself a 15-second cool off period before you post and pray about that. Yeah, how should I engage with this? What should my response be to this? Um, I think this is definitely a missed opportunity to seek wisdom that would be helpful in a positive political discourse.
Yeah. I think that these first few things we've been talking about are more centered on how we deal with things internally.
Mm,
So it's about I want to be committed to the truth and I
mhm.
want to act civilly and I want to be committed to biblical principles and I want to be praying and discerning.
Yeah,
These final 4 points, just what we're going to run through briefly, are really focused on outward behavior.
yeah,
How
yeah.
can you
Versus maybe character choices.
versus character choices? These
Mhm.
are some things that you can do. So the first one of this sort of second half of the things we can do is active participation. I think you could listen to the things we've said before and go, all right, so therefore we should just totally disengage. We've even kind of hinted if you're going to disengage from anything, maybe disengage from social media, but don't disengage from the political process. There are
Yeah.
people fought and died for, if you're in this country, in the United States, for your ability to participate in the political system. And if you disengage, if Christians disengage entirely from the political system, then the only people who are engaging are people who aren't going to share your values, are going to promote things that are destructive.
Yeah.
So the solution is not disengagement. I know
Mm,
that there is like a siren song of that. I mean, it sounds really attractive to actually to just go, what if we just don't?
yeah.
We're strangers in this. This
Mm,
is not our home.
yeah.
Why care?
Yeah.
But that's actually not the solution. So I think people hear, I need to be civil, I need to be respectful, I need to do some of these other things we're talking going to be talking about, and they take that to mean I need to just I need to just not care and disengage. And I don't think that's the solution, AJ.
And ultimately that's what drove my involvement. I mean, I believe it was a ministry call for me to be involved in politics. But this is the exact point. This was the point of it. Active participation as a believer, to, hopefully I was not 100% successful. Most of the time I sought to exercise my voice, following the preceding principles that we have just discussed. I can attest I was not always successful in that endeavor. But that's what I strove for. But yeah, active participation to the ability anybody hearing this worldwide, to the extent in which your political system allows you to participate, um, using the preceding principles, be an active participant, representing a worldview and a perspective in a good way, in a right way, and hopefully in a holy way.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah,
disengaging.
if you
uh,
can do something in a civil way that promotes goodness in the world, that decreases violence in the world, that treats other people rightly. If there's something that you can do, a simple thing like voting or whatever, then do that thing.
yeah.
It seems right. It almost seems like an element of rendering to Caesar. It's like you're invited into this political process. Why wouldn't you vote? I feel like um, maybe the less relevant question of how would Jesus vote is that would he vote in the first place? And I think, yeah, he didn't. He was not on this planet in a time where that was an option for him. But had he been, I have to think he probably would have participated in that.
I don't know why
He
not. I
he
mean,
participated in, we see him in participating in every other element of what life was like for his society at the time. He did the festivals. which wasn't just a religious thing, it was a civil thing. Like all of the elements of life he engaged in fully um, in his in his time on this earth.
Yeah.
So I would have to think he would participate.
Well, the Jewish religious system was also very much a political system. And
Yeah, right.
Jesus took every opportunity he had to speak before political and religious leaders, and to teach in the temple, in the temple courts. So, I mean, while that was religious, that was also political. And
Sure.
and really, a lot of the hatred towards him was
He didn't
was
run
both.
for office. Like he could have done that.
Yeah.
That wasn't the route, but he didn't disengage from the
Yeah.
process either.
He had an opportunity to speak before others, and he took that opportunity.
Right.
So, yeah.
He had a meeting with Nicodemus,
Mhm.
who was a political leader.
Yeah.
He didn't just meet with Pharisees; he met with Sadducees too, and scribes. So he took his opportunities to influence those people.
Yeah.
So I mean, extrapolate the principle, and I, total disengagement. Um, so at that time in Jesus's time, there were also the Essenes, where we get the Dead Sea Scrolls from. These people existed, and that was their mantra. They totally disengaged. They went off into these
Hmm.
mountains and caves and
Yeah.
totally withdrew. Jesus didn't do that.
Hmm.
And so I think we can take a principle out of that. We are
Yeah.
we are not called to disengage
Yeah.
from
He
society.
also, the back and forth that Jesus had in various interactions, it doesn't go on for pages in scripture. It's like there's a few. Hey, we're saying this, and he's like, yeah, but here's this. That was like that volley happened a handful of times, and then he's like, hey, that's the way it is. And he was done. I mean, so he had a point to make, and at the end he was like, this is the truth. And he went on with life after that.
Right. Yeah. I think the very fact that there was an incarnation is is a model for how we are to live, which is
Yeah.
in incarnational living alongside people who are by definition adversarial
Mm,
to the things we care about. There's not a single
yeah.
human that Jesus encountered in his whole life on this planet that wasn't, as scripture would tell us, by nature an adversary to him.
Yeah.
Because from his disciples, there's no, because we're all born in sin. And
Hmm.
so if you were called to disengage from anybody who is an enemy to you, then the incarnation would never have happened.
Yeah.
And
that,
so
that's
that's
true.
just a good reminder, like, engage.
That was active participation. Yeah. Us in total depravity, believe it or not. Jesus was like, I'm going to go engage with these guys.
I'm going to go engage with these people, which is a good maybe segue to the next one, which is bridge building.
Yeah, there you go. The ultimate bridge builder. That he would remove himself voluntarily from a position of ultimate peace and power, and come into this
Cesspool.
thing, whatever this is at this point. But yeah, but he did
to
seek.
bring a ministry of reconciliation. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yep. Yep. And it did not involve him compromising his right and truthful position in any iota. So now we have a different relationship with other humans than Jesus has with us, though we are supposed to relate to one another as he relates to us. Um, but we're imperfect and we're sinful. Therefore, we can make mistakes. We can have wrong opinions. We can have wrong ideas. We can misunderstand the truth that would require us perhaps to meet somebody somewhere when we gain understanding. Wasn't required from him. He is different. So, but we're trying to bring this back into kind of the ultimate point here of what where this episode is about: bridge building with one another. Um, I think in finding common ground, finding the things that we believe to be true together, can help us not to see somebody as an enemy, um, and allow us to perhaps be open to what has led to them forming the opinion that they have. Um, understanding that, how do you come to that conclusion can help perhaps in the words that we choose in when we engage with them.
Yeah. And also recognizing that I can do a good thing. I can participate in some good thing with someone without it being a tacit endorsement of that person.
Hmm.
I do think that that's important. We need to be able to um, engage with people that we disagree with, even if we even if there's literally nothing we agree on. We can't just shut off from people, um, because again, I mean, we're just looking to Jesus as the model. To your point, at no point does he compromise the truth or integrity or himself. But by definition, if he were to say, I'm never going to engage with somebody who I totally disagree with on a moral level, he could not have come. It's that he set aside that right to say, I'm not going to engage with people who are totally wrong.
Yeah.
It was in humility. So I think this is a very hard concept for contemporary Christians to grasp, is that I can have a good, thoughtful, engaging conversation with someone that I don't agree with on any level, and it be edifying and
Yeah.
kind and good without that meaning that I have given up some moral ground, high ground.
Hmm.
That I think that that's what's so hard right now, is people think if I engage with this person who believes XYZ thing, and I know that that thing is wrong, and if I engage with them in any way, I'm compromising my moral high ground just by engaging with that person.
Yeah.
You have to look to Jesus and go, that is not how he saw things
No.
at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
It's not how
again,
he engaged any of us.
yeah. Again,
Who
going back
among
to
us is a
the
person who can go,
incarnation.
well, he engaged me because I was okay? No,
Yeah.
he
No, no,
engaged
no,
you when
no.
you were not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got a misunderstanding there if that's what you believe. Yeah, again, the incarnation itself was him like, they're a mess. I'm gonna get a little bit closer. And and then yeah, he he went over to the worst of society's house for dinner and had a conversation with him. So yeah, we can if he can do it, we should be able to do it.
You can do it. Yeah, you definitely can.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, our next one, focusing on long-term solutions. So sometimes, zoom out a little bit. Let's look at the big picture. Are there gains that we could make together instead of arguing over the minutia? And which is what people just constantly do. Small details that we would scream at each other about, instead of, looking again, I think using, some active bridge building techniques and finding common ground. Perhaps then we could maybe better discern what are the non-negotiables and what are the things that we could maybe come together on and look to the future in a long-term solution. Um, so
Yeah. I even think there can be consent, like different levels of that. For example, um, are there places where I can engage with somebody for the purpose of doing good in my community, even if that person is like totally wackadoo in my view?
mhm,
Well, we can. I can't. That yes, I can. Like if we're just talking about some good that needs to be done in the community, we gotta clean up this street or whatever, solve this homeless problem. There's can be another level deep when we go, all right, when I'm engaged in mission and evangelism and things having to do with church, I might have a different line and go, I can't I can't link arms with this group because they're working counter to what I believe to be the truth. So you can have different lines for different levels of engagement. And I think that this is how Jesus operated. So he's engaging, on a certain level with literally anyone. And then on another level, he's got people who are wanting to join their ranks. He calls them to something, like to the rich young man, and says, "Hey, go sell all your stuff and give it to the poor and then join me." And he's like, I can't do that. And he's like, well, then I guess you can't join me. He drew a line because he said, following me means being willing to give up everything.
yeah,
So we don't have to have the same line for every situation. We can have different lines for different things. Certainly in your relationship, if you're looking, if you're single and you're looking for a spouse, you should have different lines than people that you would be friends with. And you might have different lines for being friends with somebody than do you see what I'm saying? I think we're so absolutist in our society where it's like I can only tolerate people at any level. I won't even follow someone on social media unless we have 90% alignment. And that kind of attitude, I think, is what's been so destructive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, long-term solutions. God is all about the long term. He made some plans long time ago, still executing on them. It's like 2,000 years to make disciples of all nations. Yeah, that sounds okay. That'll be
Yeah,
all
that's an
right.
okay timeline. Yeah.
And we're like, hyper focused on the minute, the hour. So yeah. All right. Our last one, Scott, just the promotion of peace. How can we be active promoters of peace? Defusing things, speaking of, and better yet, or no, not better yet, also demonstrating the things of Christ and seeking to make peace with people. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. If somebody is screaming in your face their beliefs and how much they hate you, probably one just to walk away. I don't know. You can say, I think your purple hair is really pretty, and then you could leave. But but to the extent that we can promote peace. And so yeah, if you feel like I just want to say something, I want to contribute to this, you have the freedom to make your own. You can initiate your own post on Facebook. You can put your own Instagram thing out or on TikTok, and it can simply be to promote peace with one another. And Matt,
Well, I think too, I think we should think about peace from a biblical perspective. I think peace is not necessarily the absence of conflict. Jesus he was a peacemaker,
mhm.
undeniably. But you can't look at his ministry and go, he never made any conflict. Um, there's plenty of conflict in his story. And so I do think that we need a more thoughtful expression and understanding of what peace means, and what it means to be a peacemaker, versus just assuming that peacemaking means I can never engage in a difficult conversation with
Yeah.
someone, which I think is how most people perceive that. Like if I have any kind of conflict with a person, then I'm not a peacemaker. And
Mm.
you can't point to Jesus and say that, well, that's the case because he's not doing that. He's not in every situation going, and and let's not, hey guys, be nice. Everybody be nice. That is not his story. I know we already joked about how you don't just point to Jesus flipping tables. There's lots of instances where Jesus stirs the pot. So peacemaker does not necessarily mean absence of conflict, but it's conflict for the sake of promoting righteousness and what's right and good, which is a different level of peacemaking, I think.
And we don't get to define that in our own terms. There is a
Right.
standard for that in
Yeah.
God's
Right.
word. That's the
Yeah.
mistake a lot of believers make. They extrapolate out their best idea of righteousness, attribute it to themselves, and then demand everybody else be that way.
Yeah. I do think, not to stir the pot, but uh, Jesus's approach to peacemaking was always nonviolent, um, which I do think is an important thing, especially given recent events, that someone could hear even what I just said and go, "Yeah, promotion of righteousness, peacemaking, that's what I'm doing." Um, in some sort of vigilante way, and you go, you can't look at what Jesus always found creative ways of making peace that often cause conflict, but were not violent. That's just not the way that he engaged.
Yeah,
Um,
I think. I mean, because he removed himself from the situation. Again, a lot of the back and forth that he ended up being engaged in, he said his piece. He said this is the truth, and then he was like, But that I got to go. All right, I got other things to do. He threw down the truth, and he wasn't really going to argue about it at that point. So it was he leaves it in our hands, and he does that now. I mean,
Yeah.
in his physical absence, he left us with the truth, and it's in our now. We're like, okay, I got to deal with this. This is a
Yeah, and I kind of want people to think about, if you're listening to this podcast here, and we've been going on a while, but I mean, you hear all the time from every politician right now, violence is not the answer. We don't
yeah,
solve things with violence. Why not? That's a harder question. Why not solve things with violence? Not just because it begets more violence. I understand that. I'm not promoting violence. I'm saying I want, if as a believer,
yeah,
I want you to think through, why was Jesus so against violence, which he undeniably was? Why did he not see that as the best solution
yeah.
to solving problems? If
Hmm.
you can't think through that and know the answer to that, and other than just, well, it's not very nice. And I heard someone on the internet say violence isn't, we solve things at the ballot box. That's no, those are political answers. I want you to have a biblical answer. Why is violence not the best solution to solving problems? And I'm not sure that many Christians have a biblical answer for that, other
Mm,
than just a condition, just a, whoa, that's, oh, it's awful. And that, no, that's, again, that's an emotional response. That's a maybe a cultural response. But why isn't it the solution? Because for millennia, violence was the solution, actually. Jesus is one of the, I think, one of the first he's the pinnacle figure to say this is not the best solution to
yeah,
solving problems.
yeah. Well, it results in death, and he came as to be life. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not only that, it's certainly it spurs a cycle of violence. Would be another thing. Is that, you can look at Samson, for example. It's just an escalation. There's no
mhm,
such thing as violence without escalation. Every action has an equal, and any sort of violent action is going to spur a reciprocal action that's going to be to the
yeah,
same degree or more.
yeah,
Um, it doesn't get to root causes of issues. Like there's all kinds of things. So we can look at, it also doesn't lead to change in someone's life. It's just going to spur them to more violence. So this is why Jesus's solutions to like walk an extra mile if you're forced there, it's a shame-based culture. So if you're forced to walk a mile with someone, walk an extra mile with them. It shames them.
hmm,
So there are creative ways, better ways that get at the heart of things,
yeah,
which is what Jesus was always after. Violence is an easy solution, but it's not the best solution. So
yeah,
I don't know. I would just encourage you as a person, also encourage your people to think, why isn't violence good? It's not just because it's not nice.
yeah, yeah.
That's a good reason,
Not a lasting long term solution. Yeah,
not a solution.
that could result in building others up, and ultimately introducing them to our source of truth and life. So yeah, um, yeah. The promotion of Jesus through violence has never had a really good result in history.
Not great.
Yeah,
And I just want to be, for what it's worth, I'm not suggesting that we don't have to get onto all this. I'm not suggesting that no, war is always bad. We live in an imperfect world. Actually, I I do believe in the kingdom to come there won't be any more wars and there won't be any more violence.
yeah,
But we don't live in that kingdom yet. So
right,
I understand that there are situations where violence is necessary. I'm suggesting that as we deal with people in our relationships, we should not be looking to violence
right. Yeah,
as the solution. I
it
think
is
everyone knows that. I just feel like I
it's
should
an
say,
unfortunate aspect of our world. Yeah, evil has temporarily been stopped or tamped down in relative small and large ways through violence over time.
right.
That is true. But and again, you said this earlier, two things can be true at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
That can
I
be
mean,
true.
even, I mean,
Evil has been
we don't need to
stopped.
get into all this, but I know like we kind of even said, hey, promoting Christianity through violence isn't, yeah, exactly. and some people would point to the Crusades and go, and that's what that was. But actually, not entirely. I mean, it's actually about preventing the spread of of Islam
Yeah.
into Europe. And if you were to look at that and go, well, then that was Crusades have some redeeming quality in the sense that you wouldn't have really any Christianity in Europe at all for past a certain period of time had there not been a rejection or a pushback against. Life is complicated and things are hard.
Yeah.
I'm merely suggesting that when you're trying to love your political neighbor, if violence enters your mind, that's probably not the right place to go.
Lest we continue to dig this hole, maybe we'll just bring this episode to a peaceful conclusion.
I think people know what I mean, right? Like
I think we
if you
get it.
don't like a politician
Okay.
or person next to you,
Yeah.
hitting them or hurting them in some way is not a good solution.
Right. Not good. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll
It's
leave it at
clear.
that.
It's clear. You will
Okay.
not be held liable for anything for
No
anybody.
one cancel me, please.
All right, so there you go. The groundbreaking episode 250 of the Church Revitalization podcast. So yeah, I hope this will be a little bit of nuggets for us all to consider as we engage with one another verbally and in writing in our various mediums. So, hey, thanks for being with us. This episode is over at malfersgroup.com/250, where the video, the article, the podcast, all that stuff exists. We're happy to have you over there. Over on YouTube, our YouTube channel, continuing to grow. Thanks for you continuing to subscribe to that over there.
Liking and subscribing and hitting that notification bell.
Rush
Smash that like button.
with violence. Hit that like button, but be kind to your neighbor.
Nuke it. Nuke the like button.
Thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll see you next week with another episode 251 coming up. Stay tuned.